Yeah, one. Good morning. Happy Monday. Are you ready? I'm so ready for this novel. I am just cleaning up my office a little bit. It's like Self-Care Sunday all over again. I showed you what I do when I come into the office. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed Self-Care Sunday. I kind of left everything and I just shut the door and I left. It was such a relaxing, something totally different. I had a whole hour and a half worth of video, and it just felt right to end it where I did, which was under a half an hour. Let me tell you a little bit something about this book. This is a paperback library Gothic. It was 60 cents back in the day. I paid $30 for this. I couldn't find it anywhere. I think it was a stage play. It wasn't really a novel. I think it was turned into a novel afterward. So the stage play was, it says it right here, presented on the stage as Angel Street. This is Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. Now, I asked John, would you read with me? Because John teases me with this book. He's been teasing me with this book for years. And sometimes when I'm really cranky, he'll tell me, Paula, her name is Paula. In the book, it's Bella. So in the movie, he'll say, Paula, you need to go lay down. Because her husband is driving her crazy. That's where Gaslight comes in at. So it says Bella was trapped in the evil mansion on Angel Street. Oh, that's what I was called. A helpless victim whose safety and sanity was as uncertain as the flickering gaslight that filled her with horror. So this was novelized by William Drummond, but Patrick Hamilton actually wrote Angel Street. First time in novel form. The greatest Gothic thriller of all time. Now those of you that read Rebecca with me, you're probably saying no way, but because there was a lot of Gone Girl. I got a lot of Gone Girl in Rebecca, believe it or not. So the greatest Gothic thriller of all time, Gaslight, a novelization by William Drummond of Patrick Hamilton's world-famous suspense classic, Angel Street. Theater goers in New York and London raved about the suspense-filled play, Angel Street. Movie fans all over the world thrilled to the film version called Gaslight. Now, for the first time, you can experience even more thrills and chills when you read this nerve-shattering novelization of that modern masterpiece of Gothic terror and suspense. Gaslight is a genuine candidate for honors in the Gothic field, and that's from Publishers Weekly. Paperback Inc., New York. This is a genuine paperback library Gothic. First printing, September 1966. It's probably why I paid so much for it. A dedication to the late Patrick Hamilton. Writing this novel, I have often thought of our conversations of 33 years ago concerning the difficulty of making a novel of a play. And I would imagine that probably is very difficult, making a novel out of a play. I was telling John in New York, if you go on Spring Street towards 6th Avenue, yeah, maybe right before you get to 6th Avenue. Maybe more, no. If you're on Spring and Broadway, you'll see, and they've been there for years. Here is the result of our discussion. An attempt to write the novel of your stage thriller, Angel Street, which later became the great motion picture Gaslight. Over the years, it has remained with me as a tantalizing technical exercise. The play from the novel is as simple as orange juice from an orange. The reverse of the process is making an orange from its juice. That's really true because I can see the difference already with the first few pages that I read. Gone are the unities of time and place, gone even the dramatic highlights so effective on the stage, but so hard to make convincing in print. Bella has become more intelligent. Jack, more psychopathic. There are subordinate characters which you would have to cut out, complexities of motive you would rightly simplify. Even what happened that dreadful evening when the whole affair came to a head is rather different. Oh my gosh. I don't think I remember the movie. But I hope that you will approve and that my readers will derive from the novel at least some of the same sort of pleasure which so many audiences have had from your Gaslight as a play and film. William Drummond, 1966. part one. So I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to get into the diamond painting. Thank you for joining me for the introduction and a little whip and chat. And oh, I'm so excited. Chapter 1 is coming right at you. Gaslight, a Gothic tale of psychological terror. A story where danger is not outside, but inside the home. Originally titled Angel Street, and later immortalized by Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. A chilling experience awaits, so settle in, take a breath, and let's begin. Peace. Bella had always longed for peace. Give us peace in our time, O Lord. Peace on earth and goodwill towards all men. The peace of God that passeth all understanding. Above her bed when she was a child hung a text. Peace, perfect peace. But there was never peace as she understood it. Life going on like a clock that never had to be wound up, never oiled and cleaned. Life was a terrible, frightening thing. There was the witch in the cupboard under the stairs. When Bella plucked up courage in the daytime to open the door, the witch hid somewhere behind the mops and brooms. Or maybe, since witches could surely shrivel, within the dirty bunch of cobwebs beneath the stairs. It was only when the sun went down and the trees extended their evil shadows that witches crept out, lurking in corners made all the darker by the gaslight or leaping to avoid the flames of the candles. She was 8 when she heard the phrase ghosties and ghoulies and things that go bump in the night from her father one Christmas Eve. It was a family party with Great Aunt Annie, her face as wrinkled as the chimpanzee in the Regent's Park Zoo, and Cousin Alfred, like a Dutch cheese, so round and red, and her mother, hidden in the paisley shawl, looking as if she was going any moment to disappear within its folds. And her father was trying to entertain them all. Bella recognized later that this was what he was doing, but at that moment she felt that he was revealing to her a truth that hitherto she had been too young to be told. Yet she had known about ghosties and ghoulies for a long time. She had wakened at night suddenly to see a face which was like her mother's face, but redrawn by some mad artist, hear a voice which could not be hers because it was so thick, slow, as if coming from afar through gauze. And this specter of her mother had fallen upon her weeping, suddenly clutching her face roughly and breathing foully into her mouth. Then the specter of her father appeared, breathing smoke and fire like a dragon, and he hauled the specter of her mother away. And Bella went whimpering back to sleep, only to be wakened later by her father stroking her hair back from her temple and saying, "Darling, Bella, darling, don't worry, sweetest." Then came a shriek from below, like the witch's shriek, pretending to be her mother, and Bella clutched her father's hand, frightened. But he stroked her forehead with his other hand and disengaged himself. "I must go. Don't worry." He went away. And now, awake, she worried, hearing sounds from downstairs, and the crack of what she came later to know was merely the shrinking of wooden joints. But she thought that Christmas Eve was ghosties and ghoulies and things that go bump in the night. This sort of thing happened not once, but many times. "Your mother is very ill," her father said at various times. "What is wrong with her?" Bella asked. "She is very ill," he repeated. "But do not worry, Bella darling." He winked like a boy. "Everything will be all right." One day her father stayed home, and two men with white coats took her mother quietly down the stairs and drove away. "It's best this way," her father said, though very sad. "What way?" Bella asked. That evening Bella was allowed to stay up to supper, and she sat on her father's left, where she sat at luncheon. But the next night she sat in her mother's chair. There was peace in the house. On Sunday afternoons her father went to the hospital, and sometimes he was sad when he came back. "You've got to be my little wife," he said. Bella made him laugh, which made her laugh too, so they were happy. Bella thought the witch had gone away with her mother. Father came in and kissed her good night, and she never heard anything go bump in the night. But sometimes she walked in her sleep and woke up the next morning in her father's bed. "You love your daddy," he said. "Isn't that right?" she asked. He hugged her. "Of course," he said. When her father had friends to dinner, Bella was allowed to stay up and play the hostess until quite late. He would talk to her about his friends and about his business, which she never understood, but it made her feel grown up. There was no one like her father, with the beautifully brushed top hat and the gold fob and the gold repeater watch, which he would let her press and hear the tiny tinkling sound of the hour and the smell of cigars. When they went to church on Sunday mornings, he sat in a pew, 3 from the front, on the right, and there was Father and the clergyman and God and Bella allowed to sit up. Church was like one of his important dinner parties. Yet all the time there was her mother in the lunatic asylum. Daddy said it wasn't frightening because an asylum was somewhere no one could reach you to harm you, like a church. If you'd done something wrong, you fled to the porch and caught hold of the knocker, and the police couldn't arrest you. But what had Mummy done wrong? Bella asked. Mummy hadn't done anything wrong, and the police weren't trying to arrest her. It was just that life had been too much for her. Why? Well, that is rather difficult to say, Bella darling. If the doctors knew that, then perhaps Mummy could come back to us tomorrow. Bella was glad the doctors didn't know, because she did. Mummy had a lunar tic and had sought the asylum because Bella wanted her to go there. She wanted her daddy to herself. It was wonderful to act the little hostess and to listen to her darling daddy as if she were as grown up as the dresses she was allowed to wear. "So very precocious, that girl of yours, my dear fellow. Such a consolation." There might be no witches in the cupboard under the stairs, but even on the sunniest day, there was a threat of thunder. She was a clever girl, and her father was proud of her intellect. "Like a man's," he said. He taught her Latin and Greek in the evenings. At first she learned in order to please him. There was a wonderful intimacy sitting beside him at the great desk enclosed in the warm light thrown from the oil lamp, with all his attention drawn to teaching her the mastery of the ablative absolute in Latin or the Greek dual. But as she came to construe Caesar, Cicero, and Virgil, Herodotus, Homer, and the Greek dramatists, her father's approbation became secondary. He was not a scholar, but the sort of gentleman more common in the 18th century than the 19th, who read the Greek and Roman classics for their wit, wisdom, and beauty. He kept the Odes of Horace beside the Holy Bible at his bedside, and he chuckled over the smart epigrams of Tacitus. Bella was fired by his enthusiasm. secretly delighting that she showed a perception of the vitality of what her mother had called those dead, dull books. But it wasn't until she read Echoes and Sophocles that she really found voices which spoke to her directly. The idea in Genesis of everything going wrong because of Eve and Adam eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and everything being made right because of Jesus being crucified and taking on himself the sins of the world, did not explain her own feelings. But the curse on the house of Atreus, the murder of Agamemnon by his adulteress Clymestra and her lover Aegisthus, and the agony of Orestes at being forced to avenge the murder of his father by killing his mother and then hunted by the Furies, this made a secret sense to her. Blind forces like Nemesis, Ananke, the Eumenides, Fate, Necessity, and the Furies, which had even in talking of them to be appeased as the kindly ones, appealed to her sense of life as it really was. Bella and her parents lived in the same sort of world as Agamemnon and Orestes and Electra, and as Oedipus and Jocasta, human beings caught like flies in the web of destiny. So that when one weekday her father returned early from the office in great agitation, Bella knew, even before he had tried gently to break the news to her, that her mother was dead. She did not say, "Did mother kill herself?" Bella knew that she had. A shutter had opened on a terrifying world. Her father turned to her wide-eyed. "Where?" he asked. "How did I fail her?" His eyes focused on a receding vista of failures before he closed his lids and sat slumped in grief. She touched his hand. Hairs were lined up like soldiers parading on the backs of his fingers. "It's Nemesis," she said, and as she did so, the shutter closed again, leaving her in the world of myth. He opened his eyes, seeming to look at her from a distance. "Out of the mouth of babes," he muttered. Then he nodded his head and smiled and touched her cheek in gratitude. She did not flinch. It was with a tragic quickening in her heart that she realized that Daddy acknowledged she was right. There was a curse on their house, too. The witch was dead beneath the stairs, but in her place there were the Furies, the implacable, kindly ones. Somehow they were easier to bear than the guilt, which made her mouth twitch with a smile at knowing her mother no longer lived. The joy which she felt in her father's company was sharpened by the menace of destiny. Like sunlight made more brilliant by threatening thunderheads, it was too good to last. Her keenest fear was that her father might marry again, for her sake or his own. So, with the wiles of a girl beyond her years, she set herself out to be the woman in his life, daughterly in deference, wifely in solicitude, and, in her freedom from demands almost, even though she would not have understood its significance, a mistress. But of course the enemy never strikes from the suspected direction. Other women appeared on the horizon, but they made off when they saw how occupied her father was with Bella. "You keep me young, my dear," he said. "Without you, Bella, I should become an old fogey." One day he went sailing with her and was drowned. For weeks afterward, she lay in the Portsmouth hospital, her heart ticking faintly, her soul as twilight as the darkened room. She ate, she drank, she barely existed. There was nothing, said the doctors, wrong with her organically. but she had lived in and for her father, and losing him had lost the impulse to live. What revived her was not Christian hope, but the Greek sense of tragedy, the nemesis which gave to Philoctetes the bow whose arrows always found their mark, and the wound whose festering was so foul that his comrades abandoned him rather than bear his pestilential company in the siege of Troy. It needed an effort of imagination for Bella to translate her Victorian plight into classical terms. Her nearest relative was Great Aunt Annie, a soured 60-year-old, widowed, barren, and wilful, who was assisted in the administration of Bella's affairs by cousin Alfred, 20 years Bella's senior. He was a lawyer who, devoid of brilliance or shrewdness, disguised under the mask of reliability the fact that he was a stick in the mud. But Bella had that life-saving, tragic sense. Bella, after her release from the hospital, went to Great Aunt Annie's house in Hampstead, where she found two Furies. One was clad in black, with black jet beads which she fondled in the arthritic fingers of hands blotched with the stains of old age. She was the Queen Harpy, with her rustling crinolines, the croaking raven voice, and the mixed scents of mothballs and eau de cologne. Alfred, her attendant Fury, wore high starched collars, black cravats ornamented with a diamond pin. Across his plum duff paunch, a gold watch chain from which dangled a heavy signet, and on his left arm a crape band of black mourn, whatever was the latest relative, dear friend, or public figure to pass on. Though in the law, Alfred looked like a funeral undertaker's mute, with the handkerchief stuffed in his starched shirt cuff, which he removed 3 or 4 times an hour to absorb the drops which appeared at the end of his long red nose, as if from a tap with an imperfect washer. Great Aunt Annie lived in an echoing mansion on the heights of Hampstead, a 19th century version of the halls of Atreus, bright with beeswax, burnished copper, and shining silver. Alone, except for 3 servants who divided their time between ministering to her meager wants and preserving her copious possessions from the corruption of moth, rust, verdigris, and tarnish. She suggested that Bella should be the companion of her old age. If, that is, you can bear with an old fogey, she added, being, like other fogies, convinced that she wasn't one. Bella accepted gratefully. It was the punishment which Nemesis prescribed. Great Aunt Annie was a sort of Victorian Gorgon who ate charcoal biscuits and talked with unusual animation when her stomach rumbled noisily. Yet Bella was not totally absorbed in her Greek fantasy. She knew that Great Aunt Annie and Cousin Alfred regarded themselves as well-meaning relatives who had a duty to find a suitable husband for a young, small heiress with nearly 30,000 lire, and who were justified in employing part of her income for her upkeep and launching her. Her great aunt, though miserly with her own money, liked to entertain with that of her great niece. Other old fogies, whom she hadn't seen for years, were invited to bring their middle-aged bachelor fogey sons to afternoon tea. A hand of whist or even a venomous game of croquet. Sometimes even grandsons would be produced, young fogies, with clicking cuffs and drooping whiskers. It was a penitential boar to Bella, which she accepted as her deserts. It was necessary to suffer, and even if they were fools, she suffered them gladly because legend told her that the maiden in distress, whether in the toils of a dragon or a great ant, was always rescued sooner or later. With Bella, it was later. So much later that Great Aunt Annie had long run out of eligibles and was resigned to the idea that Bella was an old maid who would be happy to look after her dear old great aunt for the rest of her life in return for becoming her heiress. After all, she remarked to Cousin Alfred, with the addition of my 50,000 lires, somebody would be prepared to take her on. Cousin Alfred agreed. With such an inducement, he might take Bella on himself. Chapter. First, let me say, brava to me for handling all that Greek. I hope I didn't totally demolish. I was trying to remember the Greek tragedy stories. It would be fun to go back and look at all of what this mythical world that she's living in and how the myth is relating to her life. And so we close the first chapter of Gaslight. There's never any answers, are there? But we're going to close this chapter with questions. Not with certainty, but with unease. So what have we learned in this first chapter? Well, we've met Bella as a child. She is shaped by devotion and loss. She is a girl who learned early that love can disappear. And also to be such a young child and to know that stability is fragile when she should have had that safety and security as a child. But she learns that fantasy can feel safer than reality. I found it really interesting that she believes she must suffer, and that one day, because of that suffering, she will be rescued. Isn't this the basis of all fairy tales? The foundation of most of the fairy tales that we grew up with? So as you sit with this chapter, I invite you to gently notice, where do you see yourself in her longing? In her waiting? In her need to be chosen, to be rescued? Whoever that man is has got big shoes to fill with her dad. And where might you be stronger than you once were? I think most young women who have good relationships with their father, I believe that they're, especially when it comes to a first heartbreak, we don't see Bella just stepped into her mother's shoes because she wanted her father to herself. And so the father wasn't there to guide her through a first love. I've picked that up. Because a father will tell you during heartbreak that you're stronger than you think you are. You're stronger than you once were. The story is Gothic, that's true, but it's also deeply human. So take a breath. Let the chapter settle. Let the questions linger without needing answers. I think that's a good place to start, because I think any answers that you have right now, they're going to shift and change. So just let them linger, and then you can go back and be like, oh, I thought it was this. It's actually that. Chapter 2 will be coming on Thursday. And I'm sure if this is anything like Rebecca, each chapter gives you a story that begins to shift. If you are a member, I have a reading companion, and I have some other questions that deal with the duality of the chapter, different issues on duality and symbolism. So think about joining us. I would also like to put a place on my Discord for this book where we can meet up. Discord is a great place to meet up. You can meet up in voice, you can meet up in video, you can just meet up in text if you like, and join the discussion as we begin Gaslight. Until then, be gentle with yourself. And as always, create the world you want to live in. This story is only beginning, and so is her undoing. At the end of the chapter, I had a very low music playing in the background. I know how much you all love this tune, so I'm going to let it play out for the rest of the video. I will see you on Thursday. In the meantime, enjoy your day.